It's lovely to be back here in Melbourne. This is where I started my Meltwater career 16 years ago. What I'm hoping we can do today is have an honest conversation about effort. Of course, a lot of you are here because you're Meltwater customers or maybe prospective Meltwater customers, and so of course, Meltwater is a tool. But what I've learned in all my years is that tools are important, but effort is, I think, much more important. I'm going to try and figure out where I should be standing so I'm not blocking everything so everybody can see me. I have trouble standing still, so if I walk around too far and I block the screen, please let me know if I'm blocking your view. Like I said, I want to kick off with an honest conversation about effort. So there is an interactive portion to this presentation, which means I do want you to get your phones out and scan the QR code, because rather than doing the old school show of hands, we'll make this digital. I wish I could get a photo of everybody's phones right now. And since I'm coming back to Melbourne after not being here for 15 years, I'm bringing back as many Australianisms as I can, so that's why this is called What Do Yous Reckon? We have 92 people in the presentation. I think that's most people, so I'm going to move on. Yeah, please let me know your department so I can know who we're working with here. So we got lots of marketing, lots of comms PR, no public affairs strategy, one strategy. Okay. Tell me, why did you come here today? And not in a cheesy way. We're going to make you type in one word, but what are you hoping to get? Some people just want to get away from the office, maybe free food, maybe you're hoping for prizes, maybe it's networking, maybe you want to learn about tools. I am definitely not surprised by those words that are showing up largest. Knowledge, learn, insights. Are there any words I'm surprised by? Inspiration. No one's taking the opportunity to make fun of our lack of technological skills, so that's good. Thank you for behaving. Learn AI, someone mentioned. Pastries. Thank you for being honest. Connections. Fantastic. Okay, as expected, I'm going to move on to the next slide. This is where it gets a little bit more interesting. Now, you probably came here because you want to get better at your job. So think about what's holding you back right now. I promise I'm not doing a Tony Robbins, we're going to unlock your potential from within, but I do want to know what you feel like is holding you back. Now, you have to hit submit, and I'm doing a sliding scale where you only have two options, I do know. So again, I'm bringing back my Australianisms. Yeah or nah are your options. You have to pick one for each of these three statements and then hit submit. What I can see as these needles move is that more people feel the need to work on developing their skills, closely followed by developing resources, and then right in the middle, need better tools. So my sales colleagues at Meltwater are probably excited that some of you do feel like you need better tools. But maybe we should be worried. Maybe Meltwater needs to be a better tool. Anyway, so top of the list, skills, then resources, then tools. Now let me ask you about if you've experienced any of these challenges in the last 6 to 12 months. So you can look at your phone if you can't see the screen, but which of those have you experienced directly? And then please don't forget to hit submit, as expected. None of the above. Interesting. 7 people have said none of the above. Can I just get an honest volunteer to raise their hand who's one of the 7 who selected none of the above? I'm not going to pick on you too much, but I'm curious. Anybody? Yes? Would you say your job is easy? No. Maybe I just need to list some different challenges. Okay. All right, interesting. Like I said, I'm not going to pick on you too much, but my hope in this session today is that you are about to learn some things that you can do to make your job easier without spending another cent. And maybe you've experienced these symptoms, maybe someone's put you under pressure to adopt AI, maybe someone's pivoting direction and strategy all the time on you in your business. But what I'm hoping is that over the next few slides, I really make this presentation very practical for you, even if you selected none of the above and you don't have any challenges in your role. For those of you that have been explicitly asked to do more with less, hit yes and submit. I want to see how many people are there. Every time I've done this presentation, actually this is the first time that I've had people say no. This is the first time I'm doing the presentation out of, well, I did it in the UK once. So Almost everyone here has been asked to do more with less. I want to help you do that. Let's think about, can you do more? Evaluate your current effort. Are you putting in enough effort where you still have some gas in the tank? Are you doing the most that you can do, or are you already over capacity, and if you keep doing what you're doing, you're going to burn out? That's the orange option. Thank you for being honest. Me, personally, I'm doing this job, strategic customer advisor at Meltwater, across global time zones. I would definitely put myself in that orange bucket. If I keep working at this pace, I don't think I'll be able to sustain it. But some of you feel like maybe there is a little bit of room to put more effort in. That's fine. Let's get to the good stuff. Let's talk about data. You only get a yes, no. Do you use data heavily for your role? And do you think it's essential in shaping your strategy? And do you think it's necessary to demonstrate your impact to the organization? Again, if you can't read the screen, the questions will be on your device. Okay, 70 responses. 90% of you say data is necessary to demonstrate impact. 100% say data is essential. 70% are using it heavily in their roles now. Okay, I'm actually surprised at how far to the right these responses are. Last question, I promise. Let's talk about how you feel about data from 4 angles. Whether or not you said it's necessary to guide your strategy, do you feel like you are proficient in using data to guide your strategy? Can you demonstrate your impact with data today? And can you tell a story with data? So of course what I'm noticing is that these numbers are much lower than the previous screen. And that is exactly the problem in the industry. Everybody feels like data is necessary and we need more of it, and that's why you're all Meltwater customers or prospective customers. We all know we live in a world where, and I keep saying data, I know I've been living in America. Let's try to switch that to data. Data, okay. Data is important because everybody said it, but not everyone feels comfortable with using it. So like I said, what I'm about to cover is techniques that you can take home with you and think about to make your job easier without spending a single cent. By the time we're done, I'm hoping you'll write down one thing that you can take away, and we'll come back to this slide. So don't submit anything just yet. My role at Meltwater is I've become a data coach. After 16 years at Meltwater, I've stepped out of a sales role and I'm rolling out our data-driven communications maturity model. The whole emphasis is to work with your existing tools, skills, and resources. And I conduct research with our team and I share the findings of that research, the best practices, on LinkedIn. So feel free to scan the QR code, find me on LinkedIn. You'll see some great resources there. But I'm about to tell you everything that I've learned after working at Meltwater for 16 years in the next few slides. My job is to talk about best practices, to study them, to identify them, to disseminate them to all of our Meltwater customers. It's one of the most popular questions. All our customers always want to know, what are the best practices? And most of my conversations start there. And I hate that question. Because what naturally happens if I start sharing with you what the best practices are is that I'm going to tell you stories about people who make it look too easy. And the human brain starts thinking, oh, but they're the biggest company in the world, or they're B2C, or they're B2B, and you start looking at why your situation is different. So I don't ask this question anymore. I gave up. I ask this question. I want to talk to you about what makes you so frustrated in your job. I literally ask this question phrased in this way. When somebody comes up to me and says, all right, Dino, well, I'm here to learn about best practices. I don't think I saw that in the word cloud earlier. But I say, okay, let's go back to the last time you got so frustrated at your job that you wanted to throw your computer out the window. And you know the funny thing about this question? The answers are identical. The best practices are going to get you away from your biggest sources of frustration. But the problem is, when you ask for best practices, you're going to hear something about what someone else is doing. But if you tell me what makes you want to throw your computer out the window, I'm going to try and find a way to make your life easier, and it's going to be the same stuff. Almost always, the main source of frustration is related to data. It's my boss wants a report, and I'm staying up till 10 o'clock at night trying to put together the data. I'm trying to find the clips. Oh, the Boolean's off. Oh, the sentiment's not right. Oh, the clip is missing. All that sort of stuff. it's typically to do with data. It's often the most hated part of the job. What most people do when I ask them surveys is that they love the job for the creativity, the relationships, the strategic aspect. No one really loves their job because of data. Some people do. I'm a data nerd, but not everyone's like me. How do I know this? It's not just because I've been at Meltwater long enough that they decided not to fire me. It's because we've studied 246 teams around the world and about 360 communicators. There is an assessment. You all have a little printout sheet. There's a QR code on it. At the beginning of this year, we rolled out this assessment, which is 44 questions, takes 10 minutes. And you can see there is one notable Australian logo in the top left, if your eyes are good enough to squint and see all of that. But do I see Rachel in the room? Rachel Kirby from Paddy's took the assessment last night. So all these companies, and these are just some of the more recognizable logos, but we've studied companies that are large and small, and we've looked at what kind of effort they're putting in. We didn't look at what they spent on Meltwater. We didn't look at how many users they necessarily had in the platform. We didn't look at how many times or what time of day they log in. We studied them based on their behavior. And their behavior was broken down in 3 areas. If you want to be good at anything, the recipe for success is always tools, skills, resources. Whether it's golf, cooking, making a latte, you've got to have the right equipment, you've got to know how to use it, and then you've got to have the right resources. Resources in communications is relationships. Aligning with your corporate objectives, cross-functional collaboration, and then ultimately serving your executive team with insights so that they can make better decisions. These are just some of the aspects of the job, but this is what we ask about. This is an example of the questions. There's no way you're going to be able to read these, so I'm just going to tell you some of them because the text is so small. Not that I'm frustrated. One of the 44 questions is, how integrated is internal business data? How integrated is internal business data into your comms insights? So the roundtable discussion that we just had in the other room, it pretty much started off with this. Some of the better examples that we heard around the table of people who feel like they have a seat at the table, they are combining data sets. Whether it's just a simple overlay, whether it's putting 2 charts side by side in a graph on a slide, or whether it's APIs or something like that. The more advanced, more mature, the more successful data-driven communicators say frequently is the answer to that question. There are 5 other examples up here on the screen, but the other one that I really, really like, and then I'll move on to the next slide, is how often do your reports include clear recommended actions based on data? So think about that. All the effort that you put in to generate reports and show your performance to your stakeholders and your colleagues, how often are you then just including maybe 1 sentence of what should we do next? Here's a report on last month or last quarter. Here's what we should do next time. Some people do that. Some people don't. This lovely graph is the answer to all those questions. The green spikes are the changes in the overall score. So everyone who takes the assessment gets scored from 0 to 100. The people who score the highest tend to have certain patterns of behavior, and the people who score lower tend to not be doing certain things. Those are the dark red dips. I don't know if anybody here still owns a Fitbit. Anybody own a Fitbit? Anybody in the past owned a Fitbit? Yes? I remember when I was given my first one, and I think that's when I got hooked on data. Because ever since then I've worn fitness tracking devices and I've looked at everything. But I didn't really buy into the premise of the 10,000 steps a day. But I think everyone understood that walking leads to good health. And so the 10,000 steps a day was a leading indicator. So what we've done is we've discovered the leading indicators to help make your job easier. All of you are probably wondering, what's the one thing I can do when I get back to the office tomorrow or next week? And I need to do that and focus on just developing those habits. So I'm about to tell you. Here's one example. How frequently do you train your stakeholders on interpreting comms or marketing insights? 6 people in the study said frequently. About 120 people said sometimes. The rest said never. Those 6 people Who said frequently? All scored around 70 or 80 out of 100. They are in the 4th level of the maturity curve. I'm about to explain the levels in a second, but it's this. I'm actually so proud of the fact that I won the argument to not ask any questions about your spend or what tools you have in your tech stack. It's all about how you're using them. And what we found was that there were some people that we knew very well that if they take the time to sit their executives down and say, I'm going to give you a report every month and every quarter, and I'm going to track these numbers, and this is why this number matters, and if this number goes up, we're going to do this, and if it goes down, we're going to do that. That sounds like a trusted advisor, doesn't it? That's a doctor that I would take their advice. If they showed me a blood test and they say, oh, you don't need to worry about this number, I'm going to think that you're taking care of me. That's how we want all of you as our customers to come across. And there's no tool that's going to do that for you. There's not a single tool that's going to do this part of your job for you. So I have to break some bad news to you. Like I said, human brain, you're still sitting here thinking, yeah, but maybe these people are from a different industry, or maybe they're Americans, maybe we're different over here. Categorically false. There is no such thing as a stereotype. There is no such thing as a healthcare communicator, finance communicator, corporate affairs person. What we've found is that there are just 4 distinct types of personas in comms and marketing. This picture only gets chuckles like that in Australia. Everywhere else, just completely over their head. So there are 4 data-driven communicators. I'm going to show you who they are, how they mature, and what their workflows look like, more importantly, so that you could take away today what the best workflows are. Let's start with who they are. If you put people on a lens of creativity and analytics, right? The first level, we call it consumer. Those people are reactive. I had some fun with this and I put a picture of somebody with post-it notes all over their face, but these are the people running around, one crisis after another, always putting fires out, just barely holding it together. But they're doing okay. They're just constantly feeling behind. Luckily, it's only 11%. Only 11% of the 360 people we've studied have come back in that level. The next level is you go from reactive to proactive. You figure out, what do I keep getting punched in the face with? What questions do I keep getting? What do people want from me? So you start standing up daily newsletters, weekly digests, monthly reports, quarterly stuff, and you're basically giving people something. That's like when I realized one day that maybe I should make lunches for my kids the night before instead of doing it the morning of. I was being proactive. You get ahead of the things that drive you insane. 49%. 49% of our customers are in that level, just figuring out what they need to do and surviving. The next level we call storytellers. So you go from reactive to proactive to, if your eyes are good enough to read on the screen, the answer is strategic. Not one step ahead, but multiple steps ahead. Those people use data to optimize their messaging and to improve their results. Those are the people that say, what should we do differently next time? I'm not just getting a report to keep my boss off my back, I'm building myself a report so that I can improve my own performance. 1 in 3 clients operate in this way. So what about the rest? At one point, when we rolled this out, there was nobody in the 4th level. And I was scared. I'm like, is anybody gonna come back at level 4? Are there any people that operate with a seat at the table? And I knew there were because we built this model after studying clients that we've seen firsthand. Turns out the remainder is 8% operate at level 4. And what they do is not that different from the other levels. They just simply have the trust of their stakeholders. They get brought in when strategies are being designed, not after the campaign's already done. You don't get a call saying, hey, can you run a Meltwater search and get me a report on that thing we did behind your back without you last month? That's not what happens to these people. Let's look at it from a different lens. So those are the 4 levels: reactive, proactive, strategic, trusted advisor. Let's look at how you mature. So if you're one of the 11%, this weird little diagram shows you the 3 categories: tools, skills, resources. So when you want to get good at something, the first thing you do is you go buy the equipment. So your tools are good, but your skills and resources might not have caught up already. So these people don't score as high on skills and resources. What do you think happens at the next level for the proactive people? Absolutely, they get skills and resources. Everything improves. Their use, their workflows inside the tools improve, their skills in data-driven decision-making improves, and their resources, their relationships, it all improves. What do you think happens at the strategic level?
It improves.
What improves? Which of those three?
Skills, resources, and tools.
Resources. Everything improves a little bit, but now you're on the radar. You've been giving reports, digests, you've been proactively feeding people. Now they want more. And your relationships have gotten better. Resources scores are high, almost 70, but tools and skills are lagging behind. Yes?
Can you give examples of resources?
Yep. So a resource is, how often do you get access to a meeting that another department has so that you can see what they're planning to do next month? Like, does sales bring you in and say, what would comms do for us? There's an example of a question on resources. Another example is, do you have any evidence that your executives have made a decision with your data? Data. Simple yes, no question. Do you have any evidence that people have done that? Why do we ask that question? Because we want to know, do you even ask them what happens with the reports after you've sent it to them? And that's a measure of your ability to leverage your resources. You have bosses. You could ask them, what's our strategy? Strategic alignment and planning is one of them. We'll dig into this more. There's another angle that I'll show you, but that's a great question. So what do you think the visionaries do? What are they good at? What finally happens at the next level is not, much to the chagrin of Meltwater, they don't just buy better tools. They forget about the tools. It gets better, but the skills catch up. Those people have different skills. They're on the radar, they have relationships, but now what they're doing is they're figuring out how to make better decisions with data. I keep having to say that. So for example, audience understanding. How often do you design a campaign without doing any research ahead of time to see, does that message resonate with my audience? Is that the best journalist? Is that the best channel? Is that a safe topic for us? Does it have a good overlap? There are a lot of people that don't operate that way because you just keep doing what's always worked for you. And then what happens? You get diminishing returns. The best of the best, they stay on top of that. They have a culture of constantly doing research and doing it with agility. They're not sitting there with mounds of data, just constantly collecting data for the sake of it. They are constantly asking questions and seeking answers, and they know how to open the pantry, grab something for nutrition, then move on with what they want to be doing. Now let's look at what their workflows are. So this is the part where I anticipate there might be some people who are desperately trying to pinch and zoom on their phone and take a picture of this. I will give you the slides after this if you want, but these are the money slides. This is what it looks like to be reactive. Your world is pretty small. You have a messaging strategy. If I hire someone off the street to do communications for me, I would think that they know that they need to know what is the key message and who's my target audience, and then they just pump that message out into the market. So then those people end up using Meltwater just as a monitoring tool. They try to capture every clip so that when I ask them, hey, did you do that thing that I said for you to do? They can show me, look at all the stuff that I did. But that's not enough. What I want them to do is be strategic. I want to say, I want to reach this audience, and I want to do X, Y, and Z. You figure out what the communications looks like. And so then those people use Meltwater as a measurement tool. They're measuring if the strategy is working. 49% of people have a comm strategy. They then use the tool to figure out how they can learn from what they're doing. The next level, this is, remember, relationships get stronger. So now you have someone who has a good relationship with the C-suite leaders. Corporate strategy starts to be a key component in designing a communication strategy. The best of the best, and I will give you specific examples here in a second, but the best of the best start with what does the business care about, then they design a communication strategy to support it, and then they use the data to improve and iterate on their performance. But again, it's not enough. If you're doing this, great. But there's another level. It is a flywheel. You are generating insights for different audiences. An insight is very different to data. And these people have a measurement strategy and they feed different reports for different people. One of the questions with a big dark green spike is, do you give the same report? How often do you give the same report to different stakeholders internally? People who say frequently, most of our reports look the same, score very low. People who tailor their reports score very high. Why is that? Think about your reports right now that tell you your engagement rates on LinkedIn. Would you put that in front of your CEO? Maybe, if that's how he judges success. But most CEOs don't care about engagement rates on LinkedIn. They care about stock price, reputation, they care about sales. So we've identified clients who put that in their reports. I'll give you some examples. There's an analyst firm, a global analyst firm, competes with the likes of Forrester, for example. They have 3 very distinct types of reports that they produce, all with Meltwater as a core ingredient, but they blend other ingredients with it. And they keep it very simple. It's not an elaborate 50-slide monster. They actually give people just 1 or 2 slides. The comms leader has a person on the team who's in charge of measurement. That person every month pulls a report for the measurement team, the people who are pushing messaging to different audiences. They have 6 of those. Their communication strategy is designed, 5 minutes? Okay, we're gonna blitz through this. Their communication strategy is designed for the 6 different business units that they have. They sell analyst reports to chief HR officers, chief information officers, chief sales officers. They sit down every year, they design a comm strategy that's different for every one of those functions. They design messaging that reaches those decision makers in different ways. And so the report that they give to their messaging team is all centered around who are the key influencers and journalists in this space. But their brand insights, that's where share of voice comes in. They have their key competitors and they describe how they're performing in the media and in the market against those competitors. 1 slide satisfies the comms and marketing leadership of those business units. But what do they give to the leadership team? Business insights, which means they start talking about business outcomes. So what they do is they look at sales data and they say, this is how we're performing on sales. This is how other players in the space are performing on sales as well, because they're public companies, we can tell. This is how we're performing on share of voice, and these are the opportunities that we see in the market. The reason why this bubble comes before the corporate strategy is because they know what decisions their leadership is thinking about making. So they are purposely answering questions that they are thinking about, what's keeping them up at night, and they are producing data that tells the story of what's happening. One day, they discovered that for their benefits business, in America, health benefits are a big important factor, whether or not weight loss drugs should be covered by corporate health plans. They discovered that nobody was talking about it, and they presented that opportunity to the comms leader inside the brand insights. Hey, we see that we are losing in share of voice, but there's this conversation out there that our target audience is interested in, but nobody's talking about it in the competitive set. We should talk about that. What did the comms leader say? No, thank you. We're doing fine on share of voice. We're number 1, okay? So then business insights. They delivered a business insight report to their leadership and said, there's an opportunity to reach our target audience, to get more market share, if we create a practice that creates research on whether or not weight loss drugs should be covered by health plans. What did the business say? Yes, please. And the comms leader was fired. I'm not trying to fearmonger. I'm not trying to tell you that you're all going to get fired. But people who use data with curiosity, realism, and who align with corporate objectives, that's how you survive. It's a very tough world out there. Plenty of people just put reports up on a screen and make themselves look good, and your dashboards are green, green, green all over the place. But if the business is hurting and you're not helping to figure out how you can help the business, then you better hope that there's no disruption to your business. What this reminds me of is a phrase you've all heard: they do not care how much you know until they know how much you care. Communicators who are obsessed with business outcomes survive over everybody else. That's what I've seen in my 16 years. I've always wondered, what is it about this team that I work with at Accenture, at Microsoft? And I literally asked them, and I've asked their executives. And you know what? They don't have KPIs that they have to hit. How can you demonstrate your impact if you don't have a KPI? How do you get to the point where you don't have KPIs that you have to hit? It's you're producing business insights. You're helping people make decisions. They realize that you're indispensable because you're giving me information that makes me better at my job. It doesn't matter if your dashboards are all green. That's what these people are doing.
So these are 2 newspapers in one city, and we monitored them for 6 months. Who was appearing where, what their area of expertise was. But critically, I also mapped time of day, because we were in the business of selling newspapers. And if you haven't bought a newspaper by about 9 o'clock in the morning, you're probably not going to buy one. So we really needed to be harnessing the breakfast time slot of radio and television if we were going to influence purchase. So what we discovered through this analysis was that, we had more voices on air than our competitor, but we didn't have as many voices on air in the breakfast time slot that were going to really influence critical consumer outcomes. We were on shows in the evening, the graveyard shift, we were doing stuff at lunchtime. So we would have been getting like awareness and authority, and we would have been building people's profiles. But were they going to actually lead to a sale that day if we were, on air after lunch? Probably not. We also looked and went, well, where are we down sales-wise, like a customer base? And we were over-indexing men. We had so many male purchasers of our products. So the gap, the opportunity was in female purchasers, yet only 10% of voices representing our brand were women. So it skewed my entire strategy. I then instantly had to go and unearth female journalists doing good work in the areas where we weren't competitive in category, like areas of expertise, and place them in the breakfast time slot. We did that, and 2 years later, we had more than 50% women on air, more than 50% of all appearances were in the breakfast time slot, and our sales were increasing in a declining newspaper market.
She makes it look easy, huh? She's standing right there. She hates me right now because I didn't tell her that I was going to use this video. This was impromptu. She's not reading a script. She was just telling me. And what was amazing about what she did was, is that someone whose job is publicity, or is that someone whose job is selling newspapers? She does publicity, but she knows what her focus is. That's Genevieve Bramall from News Corp Australia. In a declining market, to run a publicity campaign. What she did, I'm going to break it down for you in one slide before I get pushed off stage. We created a playbook around what she did, but the formula is 3 ingredients. Number 1, she found some data that created a very different strategy. She designed her inputs. Her inputs were, I need to get female journalists talking about female interest stories on breakfast time slots. Why? Because you're probably going to buy a newspaper before 9 a.m. Inputs. She used data to guide her strategy, not after the fact. Because before that, they were getting really good results anyway in share of voice. Then, Genevieve talks about outputs, how she's going to reach that audience, and then she measured whether or not she was. 50% increase over time. And then, most importantly, the outcome. Did she move the audience? Did she increase the sales? How long did it take her to deliver those results? 2 years. Consistent effort over 2 years, using data to drive strategy, not produce report after report about what makes her look good. In the interest of time, I am going to stick to my promise, Gemma. You can breathe easy. What I would encourage you all to do, I'm going to skip to the last slide, learn how to tell stories with data. This would have been a very fun part. You would have laughed, you would have cried. This part you would have taken pictures of, you would have said, that's amazing. Yep, I've seen that slide before, I get it, Dino, effort. Yeah, now what? I want you to think about data before you execute your strategy. Think about it. Planning for next year. Sit down and say, who is our audience? What's their customer journey? How do we move them? What do we want them to do? What perception do we want to change? Then use Meltwater And there's a demo booth over there. Use the generative AI tools that we've developed to ask better questions. Join Meltwater community. You will learn more from others, not me. And I have those 360 people. Many of them will gladly share their secrets with you if you ask the questions. You will learn more from your peers than you will from me. Connect with me on LinkedIn. You can also, those of you that are Meltwater customers, my time is paid for. You can book a free consultation. My email is dino.delic@meltwater.com. Send me an email. I provide coaching on how to use data and how to turn into Genevieve Bramall for those of you for free. And then make sure your customer success representatives at Meltwater, your account team, they know what business outcomes you're trying to drive. So when you have a conversation with them next time, you can talk about add value, you can grill them on why they missed a clip, you can figure out why the Boolean needs to be updated, but please, give us the business outcomes that you're trying to drive and you'll leverage the brain power that they have. And then if you want, you can take the assessment or you can schedule a consultation and I'll show you the playbook. I'll show you how to do all these things. Thank you, everyone.